The following program is a presentation of Far Sky Media. All content is property of Far Sky Media and its affiliates. This program was recorded and produced at the Far Sky Media Little Willow Studios.
When is the right time to ask? Many of us have questions that we would like to ask people about, but we're either scared, or we don't want to offend them, or we don't want to bother them. But sometimes people are curious, and they have information that might help us, that might benefit us in some way, or it might just give us a peace of mind. I'm talking about this because my dad passed away this month, and it'll be 15 years. And before he passed away, there was lots of questions for him. So one day, I was sitting in his hotel room, and I had all these questions going in my head from myself, from my siblings, from my relatives. And everyone was scared to ask him because they didn't want to hurt his feelings. They didn't want to pressure him. But we were also curious to wondering how he was doing and what he was going through. And we just had questions about the whole journey he was on. And it was a quick journey. It was a little over 6 months from the time my dad found out he had cancer till the time he passed away. And I tried to squeeze in every moment I could with him. My sister and I would either go together or one of us was always there for every single appointment he had so we could support our parents. I remember driving him up to an emergency room and he almost collapsed, and I held my dad up as best I could in the waiting room of the emergency room to get him checked in so he could be seen. And I was very close to my dad. I miss him every single day. There's so many things that he is missing. Watching how we are as parents, watching his grandchildren, his great-grandchildren now. I know he's watching over us, but he's missing out on all this stuff. So one day, while I was sitting in one of his hospital rooms, I came to the conclusion that I'm going to ask him. I didn't know how much time we had left, and there was so many questions out there from so many people that I'm just going to ask him. So after work one day, when I drove up to the hospital and I sat there, and my mom said, well, since you're here, I'm going to go take a walk and just take a little break. So as soon as she left that hotel room, I said, Dad, I have some questions for you. And he said, okay, because he's a very private and quiet person, but he was very open. So I told him that a lot of people have questions for him, and if he doesn't want to answer, that's perfectly okay. I just thought I would ask. And he said, what kind of questions? And I said, it's all about what you're going through right now and what you feel and what you think. And again, you don't have to answer these. And he said, well, let's hear them. And I had none of them written down because I didn't think this was actually going to happen. But I pulled up my notebook because I wanted to get his answers down so I could relay them to the people that actually asked. But I had my own question. So I asked my dad. I said, Dad, can you tell me how you perceive and how you see each of us kids? So he went through all 6 of us. And he told me, and I wrote down his exact words, what he thought and what he wished for each of us kids. And then I asked him about Mom. And I wrote down as word for word, as fast as I could, because I didn't want him to pause, because he was actually openly talking about all this. And I still have that paperwork in my home. But when I got home, it took me a while to just stay with that information, but I wrote each of my siblings and my mom a letter, and I said, these are Dad's own words, and I cannot reproduce this letter, so hang on to it, but this is how Dad saw you, what he thinks of you, and just the message from Dad. And one day I saw my brothers and my sister, and even my mom, and I said, I have a letter for you. And everyone was shocked. They're like, what's this for? Because we're just not that kind of family. Yes, we can talk to each other, we can goof around with each other, but we didn't write letters to each other. And I was adamant that I cannot reproduce this letter, so what you choose to do with it is up to you. It's your letter, but this is from Dad, and this is from your husband. And Mom right away is like, when did you do this? And I said, you stepped out one day to take a break, and I just talked to Dad. And I have no idea what they thought of those letters. I still don't know what they think of those letters, if they still have them. It was theirs. I didn't write myself a letter because I knew what Dad was saying to me face to face with me. And I did tear up. And more people need to ask those questions to their loved ones, because everyone's curious sometimes. And once I got done with that part of it, he's like, do you have any other questions? And I said, well, your sister wants to know if you're scared right now. Are you scared of dying? And he goes, I don't think I'm really scared of dying. I just don't want people to forget about me. And trying not to cry, I had to respond to him. And I did. And I said, there's no way we are going to forget about you. You are my dad. And his father died when he was really young. I never ever met my grandpa. And I said, you told us stories about grandpa. We heard them from many people, different stories here and there about grandpa. I said, I never met him, but he's never forgotten. Why would we forget about you? He goes, I just don't want people to forget about me. And then I asked him a couple other, that was a very heavy topic on those two things. So I kind of changed the subject in that. I took those opportunities. I took that moment, and I'm so glad I did. Then before my grandma got really, really sick, and she was staying with us a couple days here and there, so I said, I want to do the same thing to her. I want to ask her some questions of things I never knew about before. So I asked her about her childhood, how she grew up, about raising her kids, which were my aunt and uncles. And my grandma was sick with dementia, and she saw my dad sing on the fridge one day, and she started crying all over, and she turned to me and she said he died, because she forgot. And I felt horrible that she had to go through that all again. But I didn't put it away. We just talked about him then. And I asked her questions about my dad growing up, things I never knew before. I think people are willing to give information out if you ask, and you ask the right way. People are natural, curious people. I have adopted children, and my daughter's like, I can't believe they asked that. And I said, some people just don't know how to ask the right question. I think they're more curious. They're not trying to offend you. I think people don't know, so they asked a question, but it might not present it in a correct way or appropriate way, but people are just naturally curious people. So I told her, if they ask about adopting and how she came to our family and that, think of the question they are asking. They just want to know information they've never been presented before. This is their chance to learn. Teach them something. So when is the right time to ask a question? I don't know if there is a right time, but I would say just do it. Find out, get to know people, learn, and sometimes it might surprise you. You might get a whole nother conversation that you didn't expect, but you're gonna grow as a person. It's okay to be uncomfortable, and you can openly say that person, because I've done before, and I said, I'm sorry if this is coming off on the wrong way, but I had these questions many, many times, and I just would like to know, but if you can't answer it, it's okay. So you always give them an out, because people have a right not to answer your questions. But I've never had anyone turn me down. And everyone's like, how do you know that? How'd you find that out? Ask the questions before it's too late. If I never sat down with my dad that day, or my grandma, they're both passed away right now, I would have never known the answer to those questions. Those letters that are written, those one-of-a-kind letters, would have never happened. Getting that extra connection with my dad would have never happened if I didn't sit down and find the courage to ask those questions. Find a way to ask those questions. You'll be so happy you did, and you're gonna grow, learn, and love that person even more.
This has been a Far Sky Media presentation. All content is property of Far Sky Media and its affiliates. Visit us at farskymedia.com for more information and programs. Thanks for joining us today. This program was recorded and produced at the Far Sky Media Little Willow Studios.